Welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast, conversations to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. An uplifting and inspiring series of conversations and talks with your host, Jackie Woodside. We are educating minds, empowering lives, and enlightening souls to create a world where love prevails. In this engaging podcast, we deliver exciting, positive, transformative talks and teachings designed to elevate your life. Now, let's join our host, Jackie Woodside, for this week's session.
Hello there, Jackie Woodside here, the founder and the host of the Conscious Living Podcast, where we are here to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. I'm so excited that you are somebody that cares about strategies for living life more consciously with time, money, our relationships, our physical possessions, and life itself. Today, I'm going to be leaning heavily into that topic of physical possessions, our stuff, which sometimes, as you may know, turns into our clutter. Barbara Hemphill is joining me today on the Conscious Living Podcast. She's a speaker, writer, consultant, and created the Vision Accelerator and is the founder of the Productive Environment Institute. How cool is that? The Productive Environment Institute. So let that sink in for a minute. She is also, if you will, the foremother, the founder of kind of this whole movement around organization and reducing your clutter, having founded the Association of Professional Organizers. I just think that's so cool. She has been on the cover of Top 100 Entrepreneurs and Innovators. She's a member of the 100 Women to Know in America. And she began her career in 1978 with a $7 ad in a New York newspaper, bringing to us this whole field of clutter, organization, decluttering, got junk, all of these places. So Barbara, I'm so excited to dive into your knowledge and expertise because, I think the whole clutter thing has gotten better. I think the younger generation is less kind of clutter prone than perhaps our parents and our generation has been. But it's such an important topic to be conscious about our relationship with our stuff. So thank you for joining us and welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast. Anything else you want to say about yourself?
Well, I just want to say thank you for having me, Jackie, because this is a topic I feel passionate about. And when I've listened to some of the things you did about being conscious, that's, really, clutter happens when we're not conscious. We just let it come in. And you bring up a very interesting point, and this wasn't even something we're going to talk about, but you brought it up, and I think it's significant. Our younger generation is more conscious. They are less stuff oriented. They don't want stuff, which has in fact created a clutter crisis.
Because people are getting rid of so much stuff.
And because my generation, well, even younger than me, I'm 77, and then people younger than me collected china, silver, crystal, artwork.
Girlfriend, you are speaking my life. I've got great Aunt Ruth's china, Grandma Woodside's china, great Grandma Woodside's china. I all the antiques from this grandparent, and nobody wants it. Nobody wants this stuff. And my mom was a knick-knack collector. When she was put into assisted living, I must have taken, 6 carloads of stuff to Goodwill. Plus, we live in an area where there's Amish, and the Amish came and took buggyfuls of furniture and stuff out of her house that they could use. So you're right, the next generation down is inheriting this, as you said, clutter crisis. So say more about how that's impacting our world and people's experience.
Well, in several levels. If you talk about people like you that are having to deal with this, some people, that really brings a crisis, a spiritual crisis of, okay, this says that what was important to me is really not important. And what does that say about my life?
Right.
And so one of the reasons I created a program I offer called Vision Accelerator was because, and it was leave a legacy that matters. Well, a lot of people thought that china and crystal and art was going to be their legacy. If that isn't my legacy, then what is?
Such a great question.
And so what I love to do with clients, and I have one program, it's just 90 minutes, just 90 minutes.
Mhm.
And that 90 minutes is looking at, okay, if your stuff isn't your legacy, then what is? And we explore their lives and what they've accomplished and what they love and what they care about. And, 5 things I want my grandchildren to know about me or things like that. And my favorite story is there was one woman that did that 90-minute call, and there was a book she'd wanted to write for 17 years.
Oh, wow.
And as the result of that call, 6 months later, her book was on Amazon.
Wow.
Just to,
Congratulations. What a wonderful
to
story.
give people space
Mhm.
to think about it, and also to give them encouragement. I mean, a lot of people think,
Yeah.
oh, that's not that important. Nobody would want to hear what I have to say. It's not real, but your story is, in fact, the most important thing you leave. And I think, ironically, publishing a book these days has some really interesting things. I heard a journalist say, I'm keeping all my physical books because I know it's what the author wrote.
Mhm.
Then about, well, isn't that interesting? Because you can look at something on the internet that you
Right.
think somebody wrote, but it isn't what they wrote.
You
It's
have
like,
no idea who wrote it, or
yeah,
even a piece of art. You have no idea who created that piece of art. Yeah, or a digital image or a picture. Yeah,
exactly.
we're in a whole new world. I love how you kind of link clutter to one's vision and accelerating one's life. How does clutter like hinder or get in the way of people or even companies, organizations from achieving their goals and having that meaningful legacy? How does clutter get in the way?
Well, if you think about it, your ability to accomplish any task or goal, I don't care what it is, whether you are launching a new marketing campaign or whether you're trying to find your keys to go and pick up your grandchild. I mean, your ability to accomplish that task is related to your ability to find what you need when you need it.
Yeah.
And there was a very interesting study done that said, you mentioned companies, and that in companies, there's a study that said for every 5 employees a company hires, only 4 are doing what they were paid to do because the 5th one is looking for something. They're
Hmm.
looking for a form. They're looking for a piece.
Oh, looking for something like meaning, literally looking, they can't find
Literally,
it. Yeah.
they're looking for a document. They're looking for an email. And in fact, years ago, I went to a church actually to consider doing something there that we call a productive environment day or a productivity party. And I was talking to the lead pastor and one other staff. We were standing in front of a storage unit, and somebody else came up to the pastor and said, "Where's the projector?" And the pastor said, "May I introduce you to Barbara Hemphill?"
Right, right. Oh, that's
And it was
great.
like,
That's
I
great.
couldn't have written a script like that because
Right,
it
right.
just, so clutter prevents us from accomplishing our work and enjoying our life, which is what we were created to do. I
Yeah,
believe,
of course.
and the reason I do this, even after 46 years, people say, why are you working? Because I can't not work. I feel so
Uh,
passionate about people accomplishing their work, whatever that work is. And I
yeah,
believe we have work as long as we're breathing. It
yeah.
doesn't need paid work necessarily. It might be, though. There's a whole lot of people now in the second half of their lives, they're realizing they make more money in the second half of their life than they did in the first half.
Right, right, exactly.
But also enjoying their lives.
Yeah,
And clutter prevents people from enjoying their lives in a
100%.
really, really big way.
100%.
And my business has been based on 4 words that I learned from clothes closets. Clutter is postponed decisions.
Yeah, 100%.
The
Yep.
reason the closets fill up because you haven't decided whether you're going to lose the 10 pounds to get into your favorite pair of pants again. And then you take it over to paper. It's like, okay, there's a pile of papers, and you say, okay, I'm going to clean this up today. And you pick up the first piece of paper, and oh, I can't do that today. And you put it over here, and you think, no, I can't do that. And the next thing you know, the pile that was here was here.
Yeah.
Then you go to email, and virtually everybody, unfortunately, opens email suddenly before they even get out of bed. Open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close. And the next thing you know, 40 minutes have gone by and nothing has changed except their mood has changed because they realize how overwhelmed they are.
Yeah.
So clutter is postponed decisions. So then the question becomes, and my business partner brought this up after we'd worked together for a while. She said, Barbara, it's not enough to make a decision. You have to have a way to implement the decision.
Mhm. Yep.
So, for example, let's say you have a piece of paper, you get something in the mail and you say, okay, I need this, but I don't need it until February of next year. So what is my system, be it paper or digital, that's going to allow me to not pay any attention to that information until February of next year? And so we use the acronym for system of saving you space, time, energy, and money.
Nice. Nice.
Anytime you have something you repeat,
Yeah.
then it's important to have a system so you don't have to recreate it each time. And then it becomes habits. And I love James Clear in Atomic Habits saying, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your habits. And when it comes to clutter, that's true too.
100%.
So we say there's like three skill levels required to get rid of clutter. And we call it methodology, mechanics, and maintenance. Methodology is why are we doing this? And how are we what is the system involved to do it? Figuring out a plan. You cannot clear clutter randomly. There has to be a system to do it. If you randomly clear clutter, you end up just shuffling. Once you decide what your system is, I often relate it to a CRM in business. You have to choose a CRM. There's hundreds of options, but you have to pick one and then you have to stick with it. But then part two is the mechanics of it. Okay, if you choose California Closets or what CRM you choose or whatever, then it's like, okay, how do we arrange it? What information needs to go in there? What is the mechanics of making this system work? But then the third one, it's just where most people fall down, is the maintenance. I mean, the email doesn't sort itself. The clothes don't jump in the closet. There has to be a way to maintain it. And that's basically habits. So then you go to ask the question. People often say to us, what should I do? And we always say that's the wrong question. The question is, what will you do? Because organizing in and of itself, clutter clearing in and of itself has no value. It only has value if it gets you where you want to go. And if where you want to go is important enough, you will figure out a way. So yesterday we had a client, I say we, because we do virtual boot camps to help people organize. And one of the clients said they had not had dinner, a meal on their dining room table for 3 decades.
Whoa.
And the question was, the family was coming. And so it's like, wow, the vision, without a vision, the people perish. If we have a vision, if the vision is big enough, we can always get there. So now the idea that their family could be sitting at the dining room table having Thanksgiving dinner is a real driver.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, you absolutely need a vision. That relates to one of the things that you teach about that I was really curious to hear your thoughts on. And that is that you say that clutter, physical clutter outside of you, is a symptom of emotional and spiritual clutter within. Do you mind saying more about that?
No, it's my favorite thing. My signature book was Less Clutter, More Life, and that's the whole premise of that. And it is, so as I work with clients, it's like, okay, why are people having so much trouble letting this go? And one of the things I discovered early on was if there was somebody who just couldn't let go of stuff, if I ask enough questions, I would always find that they had a severe emotional loss of some kind. I told that story. I was signing books at I was signing Taming the Paper Tiger at Barnes & Noble in New York City in the early 2000s. I made that statement, and a young man, probably in his early 20s, walked up. He said, my apartment is so full of stuff, mostly paper, that I haven't had anybody in it for months. And he said, I come home at night and I say, okay, tonight's the night I'm going to clean this up. And he said, I sort on my bed because it's the biggest flat surface. And he said, I begin sorting these papers. And he said, I become physically paralyzed. And then he looked at me and he said, my mother died when I was 6.
Mm,
Are you telling me that I have to deal with the grief of losing my mother before I can clear the paper?
so interesting. Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm not a mental health professional, so I can't answer that. But what I can tell you from what I've seen from experience, if you find someone you trust, most likely not a family member in most cases, who can help you decide what you need and what to keep, not what other people think or not what's right or what's wrong, but what is it? That's what we call the art of organizing.
Mm-hmm.
I said, if you do that, you will be able to solve your paper problem, and it will probably help other emotions as well. Well, I told that story. I was speaking to a group of executive women at a university, and I told that story, and a woman walked up to me and she said, well, you just saved my marriage. I said, wow, that's pretty dramatic. Do you mind, elaborating? And she said, I came to this conference with the intention of telling my husband, to whom I've been married 13 years, that I was leaving,
Oh,
because
wow.
she said he's a pack rat. I have allergies. I can't keep the house clean because of all the stuff. And then she stopped and literally the tears started around her face. And she said, I never realized until I heard you that it wasn't that he wouldn't let go, but that he couldn't let go.
Yeah.
And so she said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I want to try something. I want to try again. And I said, may I make a suggestion? She says, yes. And I said, say something to him to the effect of, I never understood before how important this is to you. Let's figure out how you can keep it and we can still live together. And I followed up with them for about 8 months. And it would, now, of course, there was decades of stuff, so it took a long time.
Yeah.
But what happens is the more we tell someone else you don't need it, the more they hang on to it because they don't.
The fear, the fear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
And you said the other word, it's fear. When people don't make decisions, okay, clutters postpone decisions. It's fear of making a mistake, fear of wanting it back, fear of
Yeah.
forgetting, fear
I
of
might need
offending
it.
someone, or a really big one, Jackie, is a fear of being irresponsible.
Mm.
Like I remember I did one of the things we do are productive environment days in companies. And this was years ago when we called it a file clean out day and nobody done anything quite like that yet. And we were throwing the paper it was before we recycled like we do now. And somebody said, oh, look at all the trees we're destroying. And it's like, the trees were already destroyed when the files were in your cabinet. And at the end, we ended up shredding 33,000 pounds of paper
Wow.
that was in that company.
Yeah. I have similar experiences with clients who
And
feel
then the spiritual part of it is when you know what your purpose is, it is easy to determine whether or not something is clutter. And the question we use is, does this help you accomplish your work or enjoy your life? If you know what your work is and you know what your life wants to be, then it's very easy to say whether it is. But so many of my clients have said, I don't know. Here's the exciting part. Everybody has clutter that they can comfortably let go of, but they often don't because they're stuck over the stuff they don't know, so they don't do anything. So we say, it's like peeling the layers of an onion off. You say, okay, let's peel off what I know I don't want. And what happens almost magically is it reveals what their purpose is. Oh, this is what I was created to do.
Interesting. I love that. You've spoken a couple times about clutter as delayed decisions. The other piece that I would like to add to that is I also have seen clutter as misplaced or misdirected attachments, that people get attached to the things rather than to what the thing represents. I had a client who couldn't throw away anything that her mother had written to her from like ever. Boxes and boxes and boxes, and her mother's clothes and another boxes, and just stuff coming out. And, and this is going back to the emotional clutter, that people have. But a lot of times people they hold on to things. My mother was like this when I tried to clean out her curio cabinets of the little things, the figurines that she collected over the years. Every time I would put one in front of her, she'd say, "Oh no, but that so and so gave me that for such and such a time." And
Yes.
it is really helpful for people to allow themselves to feel the attachments that they have to those things, but then rather than misdirected or misplaced attachments, allow those attachments that love really and connection to those people, those memory, those experiences. How else can they be held and captured rather than just through things? So,
Oh, you're so right. And one of the reasons I do this still is because I continue to learn from my clients. And a few years ago, I had a client, it was a male who did reviews for electronic equipment like headsets and keyboards and stuff like that. And the house was getting full of it. And his wife was like, okay, you have to get rid of this stuff. And he had interviewed me for an article on something. And he said, do you suppose you could help me? And so I said, well, we can talk about it. So we were talking about it. And he was like, oh, it's so hard to let go of this. And I said, in over 40 years, no one has ever come back to me and said they were sorry. And he stopped me in mid-sentence. He said, I know I'm going to be so relieved when this is gone, but I don't want to go through the emotion.
right.
Which is exactly what you just said. You have to go through it. So you need to feel it first.
Right.
Or I think about, I was cleaning out employees. There was an employee worked for a company for 20 years. And she was a hoarder and a pack rat. When we went in to clean up offices, everybody said, oh, you should go in and help Lee. And I said, I don't go where I'm not wanted. And so I would never go in there. Well, she got a new boss, and the new boss says, this is not acceptable. You have 90 days to clean this place up and keep it that way, or you're going to lose your job. That's the bad news. The good news is I'm going to hire Barbara Hemphill to come in and help you.
Nice.
So I went in order to help her. And one of the things she had were photographs of her. She'd worked there for 20 years. So they were like family, right? She had photographs of her colleagues' children.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, oh, I can't throw these pictures away. And then we talked about how when you keep things that prevent you from accomplishing your work, it's doing a disservice to yourself. We said a prayer over them. So we just literally put the pictures there. We said a prayer for these children, and then we let them go. So it was a way to help her go through it. And the other one is to donate things to places where they're going to be used. So then that takes away that fear of being irresponsible. And I try to get them to visualize what that person is going to feel like when they see it. They're so excited. Like in the case of your mom's thing, somebody says, oh, I have a collection. I've been looking for this one for 20 years, and that brings lots of joy to people.
Absolutely. It really is a way to move through some of life's wounds. One more thing I want to pick up on, you used the word hoarder. And for people who are listening to this, who are kind of on that edge of like, do I have a problem here? I do want to make a distinction between people who are kind of, cluttery and people who have a clinical condition of obsessive compulsive disorder.
Right.
And obsessive compulsive disorder can be a serious clinical condition that can very seriously impair people's lives. And it's a spectrum and continuum. You could have milder obsessive compulsive disorder that makes life a little uncomfortable for you and those around you, all the way to it can create real health hazards and occupational hazards. So the difference is between OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and just I'm a cluttery, disorganized kind of person, is in the quality of the emotional reaction to things and in the obsessive nature of it. So mostly what I see with people who are kind of chronic clutterers is it's more, they don't have a relationship with those things. They're just in the background. Whereas somebody who has obsessive compulsive disorder, they obsess over all of the things that they have and I can't let go. And there's an anxious quality to it. So I just wanted to make that distinction because you did use the word hoarder, and which is generally, yeah, we can use that colloquially, but that generally is more on the obsessive compulsive disorder spectrum, which is
well, and it turned out that this particular employee did in fact had that and
Yeah.
ended up needing psychological help.
Yeah, so you do want to look for yourself at that, you know. And another good litmus test is how many people have told you they think you might have a problem with this, or
Well, a lot of people, you know, one of the biggest issues that I found launching this industry was, especially to companies, was I would have company executives hire me and then not, I had one who had me work from 6 p.m. to midnight because she did not want anyone, I mean, she's very high up in the company, highly respected, internationally respected.
Mhm.
Did not want anyone to know. And one of my first clients was a vice president of administration in a very large company in New York City. And as a new entrepreneur, I was so excited. It's like, oh, this guy is the vice president of administration. Once he sees this proprietary filing system we have, he'll want it throughout the whole company. He never told another person because that was his, it was also his strength that he didn't want he became known having the reputation that he was more organized than the rest of the world. So there's lots of complexities to this.
Yeah, it is. It can be a really complex experience around clutter. So I really want people to think, you know, there are simple strategies that you can deal with to eliminate your clutter, free up your space, free up your energy. You know, everything in your physical environment has an energy and a vibration to it. Everything around us has an energy. And are you surrounding your physical space with things that enliven you, that enrich you, and which goes to the next topic what that you teach about is having a productive environment. So what are the tenets of a productive environment and what principles can people incorporate to create that for themselves?
Well, we define a productive environment as an intentional setting in which you can accomplish your work and enjoy your life and enable others to do the same. Because how you, especially if you're a leader, how you lead your life, what your office looks like, what your email looks like, how responsive you are to people, what kind of customer service you give, all is impacted around that. So that's about, and your environment is everywhere. It's your physical environment, it's your digital environment, it's your brain. If your brain is full of, I'm too old to do that, it's too late to do that, that will never work, or one that I see a lot. So a lot of people, I was diagnosed officially with ADHD, and I'm not a naturally organized person. And people are surprised at that. And they, oh, you do that because you're natural. No, that's not true. The reason my systems work is because they were created for me. But it's also a matter of believing that you can do it. You know, there are people who say, I have ADHD, I can, or I'm creative. Creatives are just naturally messy, you know, sort of thing. So in order to solve the clutter problem, the most important thing, in fact, I was sitting in the beauty salon and the woman next to me said, what do you do? And I said, well, I help people clear clutter from their lives. And she says, oh, can you help me? And I said, the question is, will you help you? Because if you don't believe you can do it, that will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then the second thing is, it has to be a priority. I mean, if it's not a priority, because it's not fun. So we've developed these boot camps where we learn to do virtual. We were one of the first ones in the industry to learn to do virtual, which was a huge thing because so many people are ashamed about their clutter and they didn't want people to see it. And of course, when COVID came, it was fabulous because there were lots of people trying to figure out how to have 3 or 4 or 5 offices in their house. And so we could help them do that virtually.
Nice.
And it really makes it. But in our boot camps, we've learned that number one, they're there because it is a priority because they've paid for it. We have a system. There's a system that's flexible, but it is a system. But then there's accountability because we're willing to be accountable to other people than ourselves. That's why we pay to go to the gym, right? I have the same equipment in my house. I wouldn't have to go to the gym, but I don't do it. And then the last thing that we found really put what we're doing over the edge in terms of getting good feedback was community. because there's so much shame around that. And so when we're sitting on Zoom together, we're working together and learning together, and they're seeing other people that they respect that have, it's like, oh, you have trouble with that too? So it really does help when we do it together.
Beautiful. I love that. So creating a productive environment. And, I just want to say to our listeners, why? Why do you want to address this? Why does this matter? And it really comes down to you have one life to live, one life that God has given you. And how do you want to experience it? And can you lean into bringing the highest and best of yourself in all ways, including the environments that you create? I'm very intentional. I teach very similar things, Barbara, in one of my programs called Calming the Chaos.
Yes,
And
I saw that you did that. And that was when you first invited me, I looked at it and said, oh yes, definitely. We're
right,
the same wavelength.
So I'm very, very intentional about our physical environment. And one of the things we call our home Soul Haven, we name our homes. So this home is Soul Haven. We have another cottage in upstate New York that's River Haven. And so we're really very intentional about creating our physical space, our home, and our cars and our jet skis. I mean, everything that we own, creating it very intentionally so that it is a haven for our soul. And one of the things I love is that when people come into my home, they pretty much always will say like, oh, wow, this is such good energy here. I love the vibe. And I haven't hired a feng shui expert or anything like that to create that good energy, but I very much lean into the principle that everything we own holds an energetic pattern to it. And if that energetic pattern is not aligned with the you that you want to be, your highest and best self, then it doesn't belong in your environment.
Oh, that's so true. And it's true in businesses as well. So I'm involved in an organization now it's in a building called the Business Impact Center.
Okay.
And I'd love to invite prospective clients there to meet me, because when they walk in, I've had people will literally physically stop. There's art on the walls. There's an artist who's in there, and people will stop and say, oh, it feels so good in here. And it's like, yes. And that's the way our homes should feel, our offices. And you mentioned your car. One of my first clients was a real estate agent, because for a real estate agent, your car is
your office.
Your car is your office, and how it affects you and your prospects and all that kind of thing. And that was back in the days when everything was paper, and she actually had a fax machine in her car that she could.
Wow.
Yes. But we set up paper files and using our proprietary system so that she had a filing system that she could use and everything. It was one of my very first clients was a car for a real estate agent.
This is such an important topic for people because it is one of those places that it's so easy to go unconscious. So just want to thank you, Barbara, for what you've brought to the Conscious Living podcast today to help our listeners think more deeply about the quality of our relationship to our physical environments and the things that we choose to have around us, to represent us, and yes, even to love. So, Barbara, where can people find you if they want to follow up more about your work?
Well, they can always go to my website, barbarahemphill.com. And then one of the things is there is a link, productiveenvironmentscorecard.com. We all like to measure ourselves. It takes about 5 minutes to fill it out. It's not very complicated. And at the bottom of the score, it's mostly related to paper and digital information, because my experience as a consultant is that's the most difficult for most people. And if you get that under control, everything else gets a whole lot easier. So it's mostly about that. But at the bottom of the scorecard, it says, what's the one thing that would make the biggest difference in your productivity related to clutter? Be sure you fill that out, because maybe it's stuff, maybe it's the stuff you inherited from your mother, or maybe it's whatever. And then when you do that, you'll get back a office blueprint. So it literally gives a picture of what the components of a productive office are. And then you can get a 30-minute complimentary consultation. Put in, if they heard about you from Conscious Living podcast or Jackie Woodside, will know it came from you. And they'll get a 30-minute consultation customized to make it work for them. Like, how do you customize this? Because I've looked at thousands of these scorecards, and I can look at them in a second and say, here would be the most impactful place for you to start.
Beautiful. That's really, really generous, Barbara. Thank you so, so much. Thank you for just bringing your wisdom and just such an important topic for us to consider where we can live our lives more consciously. It's really great to be with you today.
Thank you, Jackie. I've had a ball, and I love supporting what you're doing because conscious living it's what it's all about.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.